Good afternoon, everybody. Today's session for our Lunch and Listen is called Peter is Still Peter. I'm Melanie from Dementia Carers Count, and this is Peter, Berry and Deb Bunt who are with us today. Thank you so much for being with us. In our session today, we're going to be discussing early onset dementia and identity and friendship and how that ties in with your own experiences. And before we get to that, I'm going to ask Deb and Peter to introduce themselves, telling us a little bit about yourselves and telling us a bit about Peter's diagnosis of early onset dementia.
Ladies first.
Okay, hi, I'm Deb. I moved up to Suffolk from London about 4.5 years ago, where I was working as a parenting worker in the youth offending team. Got a little bit disillusioned with that, took early retirement with my husband, moved up to Suffolk, didn't know anybody, and one of the first people I bumped into was Peter, and he has shaped my retirement, I think it's safe to say, and hopefully more of that will come out as we chat.
Lovely.
I'm Peter, and Peter Berry, and I was diagnosed with early onset Alzheimer's at the age of 50. I was running a successful timber business for 25 years. Which I inherited off my father, a very successful business, and I was doing okay, and dementia came along and I suppose changed my life. And I spend my time now with Deb and my wife going around trying to educate people and help people to understand that life is not over with dementia, it's just very, very different.
Thank you, Peter. Thank you, Deb. I just want to say to anyone that's listening or watching us today, if you've got anything you want to ask us, please leave your questions in the comments and we'll try to answer them. We don't always spot everything because we're multitasking, and I'm certainly not a professional interviewer, let alone a person that can professionally multitask, but we will try. And also, if you want to be anonymous, do feel free to send us a private message because we can pick that up and ask the question without giving your name at all. And also after the session, if we haven't got to all the questions, we will answer them. So don't worry if by the end of the session there's something that's still not been answered. We will get to it and we will come back to you. So thank you so much for coming on to talk about early onset dementia. And I think a good starting point would be for us to talk about what is early onset dementia? What does it mean?
Well, I knew very little about it, as most people don't really. I mean, my perception of dementia was elderly people sitting in care home. But I come to understand after my diagnosis that the term early onset means the condition is diagnosed prior to 65 years old. That's the actual physical term of early onset dementia or Alzheimer's.
And that's interesting because obviously these are people that are active people, and they're working, and so there's a lot of financial and lifestyle challenges that are completely different to onset after 65.
Absolutely, yes. I mean, this was one of the key things that I think a lot of people don't always realise. That over the age of 65, you have access to probably better benefits, a state pension, and you're probably, in most cases, financially secure. And you, in most cases, haven't got children. I myself, I had a youngish daughter, and I still had a mortgage, and I was still running a business. And I don't think I could really access my private pension until I was, I believe, 55. So I was 5 years prior to that. So there was lots of stuff going on, as well as the initial diagnosis of, what are we going to live on? What's going to happen? And because you're so physically and ably fit, it's very difficult to try and put forward to people that you need some financial help. I was told, to give you an example, I was told that I could still work. I couldn't work in a sawmill, which is what my business was, but I could work in a call center and earn money. That was one of the things that I was told. So that just gives you an idea. You're fighting so many battles and you just haven't got the ammunition to fight those battles. That's the key problem.
And I think you also had a challenge around health insurance not paying out.
Yes, we had a mortgage with a large mortgage company, as most people do. I paid into I think it was a critical illness or critical condition policy for the entire of that mortgage. We assumed that we could access that. We asked the bank if they could help us, but I had a terminal condition. So they said, no, we can't help you because you've been diagnosed with a terminal condition. That's okay, I thought, I have the insurance. But when we tried to access the policy wouldn't pay out because the terminal condition that I had wasn't listed. So on one hand, I had a terminal condition, but on the other hand, with the same bank, I might add, I hadn't got a terminal condition. So I then had to work in an industry that was deemed unsafe for somebody like me with my condition, lots of moving vehicles, sharp machinery, lots of stuff going on. And I had to work in that industry for about 2 years to pay off the rest of my mortgage so that we didn't lose our house.
No, I think I'm just going to say that if anyone has any worries about finances, that we do offer some services at Dementia Carers Account to support people going through working out how to cope. Obviously, these challenges are still there for people, and with later retirement ages, there'll be even more people facing these type of challenges. So it's really important to get them out in the open. Now, one of the things I know, Peter, you're very keen to highlight is that the condition itself gets focused on rather than people's own first-hand experiences and how they feel about their own identity or loss of identity that seems to come hand in hand with that diagnosis. And I'm really keen to hear a bit more about that, about making sure that relationships are discussed, personal relationships. And I think you've talked to me before about that, and I'm just wondering if you could talk to us a little bit more.
Yeah, dementia takes a lot away from us as individuals. It also affects our families and people around us. We hear a lot about the term suffering with dementia, and that person suffers with dementia. I, at my stage of the condition, and I'm sure many other people at a similar stage, don't really suffer. We live reasonably well with this condition because we are in our little bubble. It's those around us that suffer. The people who have to see everything that we can't do, that we could do, that we fail to do, the things that we struggle with, that I personally forget. It affects us in so many different ways. It's not just this person has got some form of dementia, so they can't remember stuff. It affects relationships between people, between friends, between family, even between husband and wife, wife and husband. It somehow changes the whole dynamics, if that's the right word, of how everything works. And I try to educate people, to show people that that shouldn't be the case. Because I have dementia does not mean that I am not me. I am still who I am. I am still me. I'm still Peter. I'm still that person who's experienced many things in the past and want to continue experiencing things. I still want to have a purpose. I still want to be involved in things. I don't want to be sat in the corner and just left alone because he's got this big D that's flashing on the top of my head. No, I want to be Peter. That's what I want to be. And that's how it is. If somebody has a form of cancer, somehow it's not the same. People don't view that the same as they do if you have dementia. It somehow confuses people and throws people into all sorts of panic stations. And this is all part of living well with dementia. It's all part of it. It can be so many different things. And I think being as normal as we can in our friends and relationships is a big part of living well. Dementia doesn't mean that I'm going to die tomorrow or next week or the week after. I'm going to be the same tomorrow as I am today. It's a gradual decline. Don't look at what somebody's going to be down that path at the sunset. Look at them now while the sun is shining at this part of the path, because that path can be a long way. So just be more.
Thank you, Peter. I think that's a really important thing about thinking about now and not necessarily looking all the way down at the sunset end. And I like the idea of looking at the sunshine now. I think you also said that the relationship problem affected your parents.
It did, yes, yeah. My mother and father were married, I believe, for 66 years, and my father had Alzheimer's, and I took the business off him, and I kept him involved in the business. And I didn't know at that point, actually, that I was doing such an important thing for him. My mother found it very difficult, and she got so actually she wanted very little to do with him at the latter part of the time. I don't think she fully understood his condition. He spent a lot of time with me, and I didn't understand it then myself. But one of the things I did do is I just treated him like Jim, like father. He came up the sawmill, he had input, he did stuff, and I just let him get on with it. And we never really had arguments. And yet as soon as he was back with mother, then somehow mother seemed to wind him up, and there was horrendous arguments. And I don't think she really got it somehow. I think it's because she was in mourning. She had lost her husband, but she could have somehow gained so much, because my father, she was very lucky really. My father wasn't violent. He didn't have mood swings. He was a happy-go-lucky bloke. He just forgot everything. And she complicated it. I'll give you a little example. When he used to come with me out in the van, he would say to me, Peter, what's the time? And I'd say, well, it's 2 o'clock, Father. And then he would say, well, you ain't got a time on you, Peter. I'd say, 2 o'clock, Father. Oh, what is the time? I say, just gone 2, Father. And this would continue, bless his heart. And I got to think about it, and I thought, well, I'll put a clock on the dashboard right in front of where he sat in the vehicle. And when he got in, he would look at this. Oh, is that the time? I said, yes, that's the time, Father. But now, to give you another example, my mother, he would say to my mother, what's the time, Betty? She'd say, 2 o'clock, Jimmy. What's the time, Betty? Oh, 2 o'clock. I told you a little while ago. And it would all get heated, you see. And then, oh, did I ask you what the time was, Betty? Yes, you did. She said, oh my God. And the whole thing would then he would fly riled. Now, he was then a man who was flying riled because he got dementia. Dementia has affected him, has made him anxious, has made him angry. Had he not got dementia, he would have been, oh, he's a grumpy old sod. So dementia defined him. Yeah. That was the thing, when it shouldn't have done. People should adjust themselves a little bit, because my father couldn't help it. That was the thing.
Yes. We had an interview yesterday on the radio, and Peter made a really good, I think it's an analogy. He said, other people have to change to accommodate those living with dementia's needs. You wouldn't ask a person with one arm to carry 2 bags of shopping. And I think that's a really great way of looking at it, because it would be pointless because they only have one arm. And I think that's what you're saying, that people have to adapt to suit your needs.
Yes, yeah, because and that's the thing, because I cannot help it. I mean, to give you an idea, probably we shall go out for some lunch or something after this has happened, and to be honest with you, it will have probably all gone. Everything that I have said and done, and your faces and everything would have gone. So
I think this is just such a great opportunity to understand what you're telling us, Peter, about how you feel and what's going on. And I have to say, a lot of people who are listening have already sent us some messages. So I'm just going to read a couple of those now, if that's okay. We've got a message from April, who says that her family are worried that her husband may have early onset dementia, and they've been looking into what this might mean financially for them, and she doesn't know where to start. So as I say, I'm hoping that our 0800 number and email address will be in the chat for you, April, because we'd like to help you start, because it is quite overwhelming, and it would be really good to, it's always really good to help people it's not a short route, but we can help people avoid some of the pitfalls and hopefully and get their information from the right places as quickly as possible. There's a lovely message here saying, Peter, I've heard you on the radio in Suffolk and I follow your posts. I want to thank you for raising awareness of early onset dementia. I have Alzheimer's myself at 59. My husband is my memory and my rock. I dread the future. I can't believe how positive you always seem. And I can't believe you went abseiling. So that's a lovely message. And we've got another one here from Edward who says it's great that Peter and Deb have maintained the friendship as they have. My dad has dementia and he still goes fishing with my brother. They will sit quietly together for hours as they would often do before the dementia. And he will occasionally tell a family story that my brother hasn't heard before and describe it in great detail. And we've got a lovely other comment saying, thank you, Peter, what an amazing sentiment about the sunset. We're over halfway through our session, so I've got another 2 messages to read and then we'll come back to our chat. Deb, I know I've learned a lot from being with my friend with Lewy body dementia. Oh, this is a question. We'll give this to Deb now. What do you gain from being friends with Peter? I think that meant nicely, other than the fact that he seems a nice man and good company.
That's a huge part of it. But I think what I've gained, because Peter by necessity has to live in the moment, and he's kind of taught me how important it is to do that and to enjoy what I'm doing now, not to worry about the future or angst over what I did yesterday, but just he's taught me how to enjoy that moment. And every now and again I get a kind of a shudder through me as I think, we're out cycling, how good is this moment now? So he's taught me that. He hasn't yet taught me how to fix a puncture, so that's something to work on. But taught me to value what I have, and he's taught me to a little bit of humility. I think when I broke my shoulder, I was full of angst and grief. Oh, look at me, I've got a broken shoulder. But I knew it was going to get better. Then I look at Peter, and clearly he has a condition which isn't going to get better. And he just puts things in perspective. But mainly, he's just Peter, my best friend. And I think that's the important thing. I didn't know Peter before the diagnosis. So he's always been, Peter has dementia. But there are huge chunks of the day when I don't know Peter has dementia because he's my mate. And that's what I get out of it. I've got a really good, funny, loyal friend.
Lovely. And lovely comment here from Busy saying, this gentleman's story is so inspiring. Too many persons with this condition are not given their own value and still having a purpose. And I think that's come across really well. And she wants us to think about, well, how, especially for people in care homes, that's even more risky, a risk of losing an identity. I'm going to move on a little bit because we've got so much to say today. I think we've talked a little bit about living well with dementia and it meaning different things to different people because everybody is different in the first place, which is quite an important thing to remember. Peter, you've said to us before that you felt no different after diagnosis, but perhaps tell us a little bit more about keeping your identity and how you felt and what you taught yourself over this.
Well, when we were first diagnosed, and I say we because it was a family diagnosis, it took about 10 or 15 minutes for a doctor to say what I had. And I think I came out of the surgery and my whole world had changed. And it took me probably 12 months to actually understand this. We didn't tell many people for the first 12 months because I was ashamed, embarrassed, silly things now. I went through a lengthy depression as a result of it. Look back at all of that, I realized that it was the depression really that I suppose gave me what I needed to move forward. I realized that nobody was helping us in that situation and that I could help others by doing what I'm doing now. And I think that was, I suppose, the kick up the bum that I really needed at that point in time. I needed a purpose. I needed a sense of being able to achieve something again. But I also it was a learning process, those 12 months. As I say, I had this diagnosis which took a few minutes really, and I came out a different person. But I realize now that I shouldn't, because I was in that doctor's surgery at, we'll say, 10 o'clock. I came out at 20 past 10 and my world had changed. But in reality, it hadn't changed. I was the same person as I was 20 minutes ago. This is the bit, what I heard was, you have Alzheimer's, it will get worse, you can't do this, you can't do that, you can't do this. This is what was going through my mind. What should have gone through my mind was, okay, Peter, you're the same person now as you was when you walked in that surgery. Let's go out and let's do this, let's do that, let's do everything. I was focusing on the I can't do's and not the I can do's. And that was the big thing. And it was such a simple thing for me to realize. And why it took me 12 months to realize it, heaven only knows, but it did. And this is what I want to try and get through to people. You are still that person after that diagnosis. And you will be that person for a long while. You're not going to go off and fall off the edge of the cliff and be that person with dementia down there. You're just going to be on a gradual decline. That is the reality. But the more you do, the more positive you are, and the more things you get involved in, maybe that decline won't be so sharp. Maybe it'll be a little less. So instead of having to run down that hill towards your dementia monster, maybe it's a little less so that you can actually take a slow walk to it. And this is what I do. I try and keep active and I try and do everything and have people around you who can help you. That's the thing. People who can understand and assist you to do what you want. I have all these wonderful ideas and then I pass them over to Teresa and Deb and they do them. And then I just, they organize them and I just do the easy bit.
Oh, thank you.
I'm so lucky, really.
Actually, can I just add one thing? I'm
Yes.
sort of reflecting on what Peter has given me in answer to that message. Peter I've had two ambitions in life, apart from world peace and all that sort of stuff, which we're not going to get. One ambition was for Arsenal to win the Champions League. That is not going to happen in my lifetime. The other ambition, well, it might do, but I doubt it. The other ambition was to be a published writer. That is what Peter has given me. We've had 2 books published. He has helped me achieve my ambition. I can't think of a better gift.
That's a phenomenal gift, and what a partnership to have. Deb, do you want to just tell us what those books are about and where people can find them if this is inspiring them?
If that's okay, I happen to have a copy next to me. So the first one is called Slow Puncture, Living Well with Dementia. And it's sort of a year in Peter's life, just after I met him. That everything is available on Amazon, but that one is published by the Book Guild. And it's also in a range of independent bookshops in the Suffolk area, Woodbridge, Ipswich, Halesworth. The second one we did a year later is called Walk With Me, Musings Through the Dementia Fog. And this is a collection of Peter's, it's sort of poetry. It's the thoughts that have come to him late in the evening when he's tired, and he'd send them through to me on the phone. And I thought they were beautifully expressed. It's kind of me taking the top of his head and sitting in his brain for a little while and knowing what it's like, how he feels. They're not poems that he's sat over and agonized and changed words. They're literally from his head to the phone. And I've been keeping a note of them. And I thought they were too good not to share. So we put them in a book as well.
I think that's really lovely. So I would just say we've got the most number of comments here. So I'm going to read some more of these. A message here saying, although my husband and I don't share the same level of communication that we once do, there were moments when he, like you say, speaks from his heart, and it means so much to know that we still have a connection, even though it's quite distant at times. And an anonymous message saying, maintaining relationships and friendships is a lifeline. I couldn't have coped without the support of our neighbours. Another anonymous saying, people always tell you to be flexible and adapt to situations, but it's not always that easy when you have other responsibilities. And I think that's probably coming from, a family member. And I think that's really good for people to bear that in mind, because none of us in this are asking people to be perfect. We're aware that life definitely gets in the way of our perfection. And I, again, do seek support, because feeling overwhelmed is quite normal, because this is a long journey, and as Peter's giving us the positive side of it, which is really helpful to hear. And this is another comment saying, this is so refreshing to hear. Often we hear just the misery of dementia. My husband's just been diagnosed. It was too late. We were in denial, but I think it was more because we were terrified. If more people like you told us we could resist the dementia monster, it would be better for everyone. And that's the exact purpose of us talking to Peter today. And a lovely comment here, you are inspiring friends. It makes me realise how important friendship is for someone with dementia. Sometimes we forget that in the busy process of caring. So I'd like to thank everyone that's sending in these comments, because it's just showing how deeply this topic is felt by people, and how much we're learning. And I think you've told us about your father, and you've told us a bit about keeping him in work yourself back in the day, and how that, it'd be nice to understand a little bit more about how you helped him to carry on working, and those adjustments. That was part of keeping his identity in the workplace.
My father started the business in 1947, and when he couldn't run it anymore, I took it over. But I just felt as though he was still a very physically active man, and I just sort of suggested to him that, do you want to come up the yard, Father? And he was still driving, I think, at that time. Oh yes, he said. And he would come up and he would just help me do things. Now, because bearing in mind that he'd been doing this work all of his life, it was just second nature to him. He would lose equipment up at the yard, but we had a system where after he had gone home at the end of the day, I would go round, hunt everything, and I would hang it back in the yard, in the sawmill, in the places where it always was. And then the same procedure would happen again the next day. But it didn't really matter, because it wasn't about me getting on to him about losing something. He didn't really lose something, he just mislaid it. That was all that happened. And I think that keeping him active, keeping him talking to people, because he was such a prominent figure in the timber industry, that when people came up to the yard, even though I ran the business, the first person they would go to would be Jim Berry. And I allowed that, just let that happen, because Father could talk to them about timber, he would have a laugh with them. It gave him a purpose. Yeah. And I didn't realise how vitally important that was. He lived for 24 or 5 years with Alzheimer's. Until it eventually got him so he couldn't speak, and he was a very poor thing. But up until that, I suppose that was the last, 10 months of his life. Up until that, he was pretty good. And I still believe today that had I not kept him involved in the business, something that he was passionate about, I think he would have lasted 10 years. That's my theory. I know that now, but I didn't know that then, because there was not as much emphasis or so much training going on about dementia and about the Alzheimer's. We used to let him do anything he wanted. It didn't matter.
Oh, that's great. I think, Deb, you've got a thought about Peter's pioneering spirit there.
I do. I do. I probably do.
I think it's about Peter sort of thinking about living well with dementia for his dad, way before, as Peter was just saying, he did this instinctively for his father, but it's all about the living well. And I think both of you perhaps have got some ways and different ways that you can live well, which don't involve abseiling, I think.
Well, I think one of the actual key things is, if I just come in here, that dementia is a very complicated disease, but it's surrounded by simplicity. And we often try to work out the complicated stuff. What is auntie, uncle, or whoever thinking? Why are they saying that? Why don't they recognize me? That's the complicated part. Now, you'll never work that out. Why am I forgetting? I don't know why I'm forgetting. The simple part, if you go and see your relation and they don't know who you are, be a friend to them. Just be a friend. Just be somebody who makes them laugh. You know who they are. Tomorrow they might know. That's the simple part of dementia.
That's perfect, Peter. I'm going to stop you there just because we're running out of time. I'd like to thank you both so much. I think I could do another hour listening to this, because that just be a friend is such a great thing to say. And I'd really like to thank you both for all of your insights. We'd like to thank everyone who's joined us. We'd like to thank everyone that's commented, and to say that next week we've got a Lunch and Learn session where our Head of Services, Sue Hines, will be discussing with her guest going back to work, if you've been caring for someone with dementia, and if you want to go back into the workplace. And I think that could be very interesting. And do have a look on our website if you think you'd like to come and see some more of our work and how we can help support you. And do call our number if you think you need some help that you're not getting. And a massive thanks again to Deb and Peter for joining us today. And take care, both of you. We'll look forward to hearing more about you soon.
Thank you very much for inviting us. Thank you.
Bye now.
Our pleasure.